Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Rosa Technocrat. Today, as always, I am again here for some troubleshooting issues, but today I am here for ARP Address Resolution Protocol. So I am going to tell you all about ARP and MAC address on a Fortigate firewall or on a Fortigate device. So let's start. Just to give you a quick summary, I'm not going to define what is ARP, how ARP works or like about more about the protocol, but I will be telling you, giving you information based on troubleshooting. But just to give a summary, what is ARP? ARP is a protocol or procedure that connects and changing IP address to a fixed machine address, or you can say from IP address to an MAC address, also known as media access control address in a network. So to summarize, whenever an device connects to any other device in a network, it has to convert from IP address to MAC address and vice versa. So the protocol or the process that converts or that gets this dynamic thing done is the ARP address resolution protocol. So using ARP, we can convert or we can get to know the MAC address of an IP and vice versa. Let's go. Before starting, you will be knowing all these from this. Do you know there are different versions or type of ARP? Do you know for how long ARP entries stay in a ARP table? We will also know if ARP is being used or not. Is it simply lying in the table or is it really being used or not? Do you know, like, can we know when the ARP address was last updated in the ARP table? So if you don't know, continue watching my video and you will come to know the answers for all of these. Let's first talk about the different type of ARP or the various versions of ARP. You might have heard proxy-arp, gracious ARP, reverse ARP, and inverse ARP. These are the various versions of ARP. There is not much difference between them, but it's basically the process, how and when the ARP address or the IP address is getting converted to MAC address, who is initiating this learning, who is requesting this learning. So based on the requester, the sender, and the scenario or the use case, this conversion is being asked for. Based on that, we have these type of ARPs. So the first one is Proxy-arp. Proxy-arp is a technique by which a proxy device on a given network answers the ARP request for an IP address that is not on the network. So to simplify, one device on behalf of any other device answers the ARP request. That is a proxy-arp. So as the name says, proxy. Proxy means someone answering it on someone else's behalf. For example, during our college days or class times, we used to proxy the attendance. So proxy the attendance means we are answering yes to the teacher on behalf of my other friend or someone who is absent, and by silently not telling the teacher that actually the student is not present in the class, or telling that the student is not there. So this is proxy, right? So same way proxy ARP is like one device replies the ARP request on behalf of the actual host which is sitting behind the device. So that is called proxy ARP. The next one is gracious ARP. So gracious ARP is mostly initiated by the device in the cases when there is a change on the device, when the interface went down, or like in case of clusters. So basically, if the device is coming up after a reboot or there was a change in the cluster state, in such stages, the device itself sends a gracious ARP to tell other device on the network that, hey, guy, please note this is my IP address and MAC address. And this is sent even when it is not requested by others. This is sent as a proactive approach. So this is basically a proactive approach to resolve the IP address to MAC address so that the other devices on the network comes to know about your new IP or new MAC address that is being updated because of some administrative change on the device. Then the third one we have is reverse ARP. So reverse ARP is basically generally used by host machines to know their own IP address. Sometimes there are scenarios where the machine itself does not know what is my IP address. So in such cases, they request a reverse ARP, and using the ARP discovery, they can know their IP address. And the last one is the inverse ARP. Inverse ARP, whereas ARP uses an IP address to find a MAC address, IARP uses a MAC address to find IP address. So it's basically the reverse of ARP is called inverse ARP. ARP only does MAC address to IP address, and inverse ARP is MAC address to IP address. That's it. So it's basically all these are from the perspective of who is requesting and who is answering, and who is converting from IP to an MAC address and vice versa. So these are different versions of ARP. First, proxy ARP, second, gracious ARP, then we have reverse ARP, and finally the inverse ARP. Hope it's clear to everyone. Let's go to our next slide. And uh, as you know, like I always show all these things on a real device as well, and we can see all these things in practice. We will, whatever we talk, whatever we discuss, I show that on a real device also. So of course, have patience. We will do all this in the lab as well. Let's continue. Some facts related to ARP and broadcast on the Fortigate. So by default, Fortigate does not forward broadcast requests or ARP requests by default. Why I am saying ARP request is generally the ARP requests are a broadcast request unless and until it's a unicast by one or some specific host on the network or node on the network. So Fortigate does not forward the broadcast packets between the interfaces or between different zones. Let's say you receive a ARP request on port 1 of the firewall will not be forwarded to port 2. That is the default behavior of the device. But yes, based on the requirement and use cases, or if you need to forward it, Fortigate can enable, or on the Fortigate you can enable forwarding the broadcast on an interface. That can also be done. I will be talking about how to enable that further in my video. Then the second is Fortigate may or may not respond to ARP replies for VIP address and pools. You know what is, you might be knowing the VIP address or virtual IP address on Fortigate. So whenever we create some static binding between IP to IP or like NAT, so these are called VIP address. So for VIP address also, Fortigate can reply based on the configuration done in the VIP, or it may not reply. So these were the few things related to Fortigate. Now let's talk about how the ARP works on Fortigate. First thing is, have you noticed or have you ever seen like you can use get system ARP command on a Fortigate to see the ARP table that exists on the firewall. So let's go. Okay, let's start our uh, practical now itself. Okay, let me log into my device. That's it. Okay. So if you run the command get system ARP on the Fortigate, you will see the ARP table as you can see in my PPT as well, and on the device as well, right? So I will move this device on the right, and let's follow the PPT as well. Whenever you are running get system ARP, you can see the ARP table. But now you notice I have only two IP addresses onto my firewall as part of the ARP table. This is because I don't have much host and this is a lab device. Now let's say I'm pinging a host on my network execute ping. Let's say this is one of my device which is connected in network, and you can see here I don't have a ARP address for this IP address. I'm trying to ping 10.100.0.50. Okay, and in the command above you saw like there is no ARP for 10.100.0.50. So whenever you are executing a ping or initiating any traffic for a IP address, so the IP address has to be converted to a MAC address to send it by the layer 2 data link layer and further to the device. So this conversion is the ARP address resolution protocol, which is resolving from IP address to MAC address. Let me do a ping. I did a ping and I am stopping the ping. Now let's check our ARP table back. You notice something here? Now you have the ARP table entry for this. Whereas in the previous output, you might have noticed this ARP table does not exist, right? So this is how the using the ARP, the IP address is converted to a MAC address, and you can see that entry into the ARP table. So get system ARP can be used to know the current ARP table on the Fortigate. So this is what I was explaining here in the slide, like get system ARP. Do you did that and you did not show, then I just try to ping some host on my network, and then again I did a get system ARP, and I can see the ARP entry exist. So basically now, whenever next time there is a request or there is a ping for or any traffic for the host 10.100.0.50, the device will not perform a ARP lookup because the ARP table already has that entry. So the ARP request did not need to be initiated again. Okay, then let's go to our next slide. What does it? Oh, this is so into deep now. As I said in the beginning, like, is there a way to know when the ARP address was last updated? Okay, so all these details can be seen. You might not be aware about this command, or maybe I'm not sure, but let's talk about this. Okay, Diag IP, Diag IP ARP list. Okay, this also lists the ARP table only, but in a more detailed way. Okay, Diag IP ARP list. Okay, here you saw you had three ARP table entries here, and now you can see here you have again these three ARP entries, right? But it gives so many other details. Here you saw in the previous command, this IP address is learned on port number 5 with this MAC address and this IP address. Now if we take the same as an example here, this is the entry we are talking about now. Okay, and here it says interface name is port 5, that means it was learned on port 5. This is the IP address 10.100.0.50 that has been learned on this interface. This is the MAC address of the device. Now let's talk about state. What does state means? What is use? What is update, confirm, and reference? Okay, so these are few more fields that gives you more detail about the ARP, well, like whether it is being used or not, when it was updated, and all. Let's talk about the state. An ARP entry in a table can be in many states. Okay, and this state field gives you the value. Let's talk about what does it mean. Okay, I will just move my window a little bit on the side, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm not able to move it. Okay, so okay, now here we have. So if the state is 001, you can see here incomplete is 001, reachable 002, stale 004, delay 008, probe 0010. So these are the various states of the ARP table. So 004 means it's stale. Okay, I will explain more on to the next slide what actually does it mean. Okay, Then we have update. This update value is in seconds. So if I say when was this Mac ARP table, I'm sorry for Mac, when this ARP entry was created. So ARP entry was created this many seconds ago. So 8,000 seconds ago. Okay. So 8,000 seconds ago means around. Oh, I'm weak in math. 8838 divided by 60 equal to. Oops, sorry, there is something wrong, but this is in seconds. I will give you exact calculation for this. Okay. Then the reference equal to 1 means whether this entry is being currently used by forwarding or routing table or any other instance or any other process that is currently going on to the firewall. So reference tells whether this ARP entry is being used or not. So if there are references to an ARP table, so it may not get deleted. That we will talk about in further slides. Okay. For now, I will say state references if it is currently being used or not. Okay. So let's go on to the uh, next slide. So as you can see here, the reference value tells number of time the ARP entry was used to forward an ingress packet. Okay. Okay. I was talking about index. This is the interface index number. Then this is the MAC address, and this is the state. And state, the various fields of the states are mentioned down, which can be incomplete, reachable, stale, delay, probe, fail. And we also have no, are, permanent, and none. Okay, so these are the different states that Fortigate displays while using Diag IPR list. And reference tells us about the number of time ARP entry was used to forward an egress packet. And update tells us when this ARP entry was last updated or created. So these are different fields. Now, as I explained earlier, like use is the time in seconds since the ARP entry was last used to add the MAC address to an egress packet. I'm sorry, I told something. Yeah, use. Sorry, I told it on the update, but use is something where when this was last created. Okay, so let me go back to my C. This is why I was getting confused here. Yeah, so use. Okay, use tells when this was created. Time in seconds since the ARP entry was last used to add the MAC address to an egress packet. IF name is the name of the Fortigate interface, and index is the interface index of the corresponding Fortigate interface. We were talking about the states, the ARP states into the ARP table. So these are the various states which we talked about. Reachable means an ARP response was received for this. So basically there was an ARP request and ARP response was received. That means it's fine. Then we have stale was no ARP response within the expected time. Okay, because it was long back ago when I did a ping, and after the ping there is no further traffic onto that. So further means now there is no ARP response onto that, and there are some timers that are running which does this ARP request frequently, that I will talk. Then the state 008, like a transition state between stale and reachable before probes are sent out. Then we have failed, that means the ARP is failed and may not work. And no ARP means device does not support ARP. Maybe it's an IPsec interface or VPN interface. In such cases, there may not be like the state can be no ARP. Then we have permanent. So permanent is, see, these ARP can be dynamically learned, or as an administrator, we can create manual ARP entries by doing a static ARP entry onto the FortiGate. So when you are doing a static ARP entry, that is in the state of permanent, and that will be showing as 0080. We can see that we can configure a static ARP, and then we can see that as well. Now, some more interesting things about ARP on FortiGate. Now you know the states, Diag IPR placed. get system ARP, all this. Let's talk about some behavior. This is the ARP behavior. So the ARP reachable time is updated every 300 seconds, or you can say 5 minutes. Okay, but it is nothing to do with the aging. You might have seen the aging field in the get system ARP. So by default, the Fortigate queries or does a ARP requests every 300 seconds. Okay, and if it does not receive a response onto that, or then the ARP entry may get deleted from the table, or if there is no traffic. Okay, and you might be having a question in your mind that many times, or someone may ask you, like, I had this ARP entry and now I don't see it anymore, or you have a ARP entry in the table and you have a query or curious to know when this will get deleted. So an ARP entry will be removed from the FortiGate if it is in stale state for 60 seconds. That 60 seconds means 1 minute. So let's say if there is no traffic for one of your PC or host or an IP address on the FortiGate, then the ARP entry will be deleted. So you can say ARP entry will be deleted in 1 minute or 60 seconds on FortiGate. But the second, there is also a second condition to that. Apart from the stale state, it should also be reference should be zero. We talked about reference, right? So reference is like it is being used. Number of time the ARP entry is used to forward and packet. So reference should be zero. That means this ARP entry is free and should not be used by the forwarding table. If it is being used by forwarding table, that means there is some action going on, right? So there are two conditions to delete an ARP entry on firewall. That is, an ARP entry will be removed if it is in stale state for 60 seconds and reference is zero. Because of this second condition, it does not really make a lot of sense to mention when it will be removed, since it might be used by one or other thing, maybe some forwarding table, some database, or if there is no traffic, then yes, you can say in 1 minute this will be deleted. The default base ARP reachable determines how often FortiGate will send ARP requests. That I said was 300 seconds and 5 minutes. Okay. Now, adding manual ARP slash MAC entry, as we saw, there is a state called permanent. So permanent means this ARP entry is added as a permanent entry by the administrator. So that you can do by using config system ARP table, and then you can have an set IP, set MAC address, and end. So this will create an uh, static ARP entry. Here you can see 999 I have created and binded against this MAC address. So let me show you the same thing on the device as well. Let's, and then we will see the state of that as well. Okay, let's do config system ARP table. Let me see, you can do a show command here if there is an existing ARP entry. I see there is no existing static ARP here, so let me do a added 0. So this 0 means the number one static entry I am adding. So then I have to do set IP, whatever the IP address you want to do a static. Okay, and set the MAC address, set MAC. For example, I will just take the one or whatever. In real production environment, it has to be the actual MAC address that you want to add. I will add 0D97B488 for example, and then I will say end. What I missed, that means I missed something. What I missed is interface, because without specifying on which interface this has to be binded, that's not possible. So adding an static ARP requires you to have the interface, the IP, and the MAC. These are the mandatory things. I will again do a config system ARP table, add a 0. So there is nothing. Okay, set IP. I will simply use the arrow, set IP. I will use the arrow again, set MAC, and set interface O2 for example, and then end. So now it took. That means these three are the mandatory parameters to configure a static ARP. Now if I do get system ARP, You can see the static ARP entry is created here. And this does not have an aging because this is a static ARP and it's permanent. I had binded this ARP entry to port 2. So now it's binded to port 2. Now if I do same by using Diag IP ARP list, you will also see this entry here and mentioning the state as 00080. So 00080, as we discussed, it is the permanent state, right? So that we know it's permanent. So by knowing the state, you can know what kind of or what state the ARP entry is in, right? And you can see reference is 0. So reference is 0 means it's currently not being used by anyone, right? Okay. So now you know how to, and now I can also show you how to delete this ARP entry again. Config system ARP table, delete 0. Delete, I'm sorry. Okay, I will go back. I will do show and I will do delete 1. Okay, so I have deleted this and I will do get system ARP. Yeah, so now you can see the ARP static which we had created is deleted also. So you can simply use config system ARP table and delete 1. So when you do delete 1, that means this is a number and you are deleting this. So this way you can create and delete an static ARP onto the Fortigate. Let's go to our next slide. Yeah. So for any device, it's not only about FortiGate, but any device on the network will have a limit on the number of ARP entries that it can store in the database or store on the device. So on FortiGate, this limit can be checked by simply using the get command and finding for ARP max. So this may vary depending on the platform to platform. Means different hardware models too. Simply doing a get on the firewall, config system global. Okay, under global, if you do get, so these are all different global parameters. So one of the parameters inside this is the ARP. So I will, because rather than going through all the list, I will simply do a get and find grab what ARP. You see here ARP maximum entry is 131072. So basically one stands 100,000, 10,000, and 1 lakh. 1 lakh is like 100,000, 1,31,072. I'm sorry, I'm weak at international system, so I just use the international system to tell you the number 1,31,072, and this may vary platform to platform. So this is the maximum number of ARP entries a device can have, not device, a specific Fortigate model can have, and this limit can be checked onto your model by using get under the global configuration. Okay, as you can see here, config system global, and you can change this value also. Okay, by default it is set to this, but the maximum value that can be supported varies from the platform to platform. But generally we don't recommend, or we don't recommend to change the maximum number of ARP table, because this might reduce your performance onto the device. So this is how it works, and generally this is sufficient on a network, unless until you are a ISP or some big LAN where you might have millions of hosts directly connecting to firewall. Generally you won't see this number of ARP entries onto the firewall, because firewall will be either at the parameter or between some other layer 3 devices. So most of the endpoint related ARP entries will be on the distribution or on the access layer, rather than at a parameter or at a gateway level. So firewalls will not have such big ARP table. So we saw here how to do, how to find the maximum number of entries and how you can change it. Okay, this I have already shown you how to delete an static ARP, how to create an static ARP, and then proxy ARP. So proxy ARP can also be manually configured, or it's based on the firewall behavior. Let's say you have a virtual IP or VIP configured on the FortiGate. So FortiGate can respond as a proxy for all the VIP IP addresses that are configured. And you may change the behavior of that response while creating a VIP. There is an option like no ARP. So you can say for this VIP, no need to do the proxy ARP. Otherwise, when if you want some proxy ARP to be configured, then proxy ARP can also be configured by using config system proxy ARP. Okay, then we talked about in the beginning we talked about broadcast forward. So I had told mm, FortiGate by default does not forward the broadcasts. So if you go under an interface, config system interface, and you can do set broadcast forward enable. So let me show you this also. If I do config system interface, on which interface you want to enable, let's say in my case I will say edit port 2, and I can say so grab forward. For example, what is the current status? It's already enabled, because maybe while doing this slide I might have enabled it. We can disable it as well. Set broadcast forward disable, or we can have it enabled. You can do set broadcast forward enable. So this basically enables broadcast forwarding or layer 2 forwarding on the FortiGate. So by default the behavior is disable, and we can do end, and this changes the behavior of the broadcast forwarding. So in this whatever study material, whatever I talked about, I have used few references. All these references were mostly to Fortinet KB articles and Fortinet documents which are public onto the Fortinet community website and docs.fortinet.com. Hope you liked this video onto the ARP, and for any more details or if you have any questions, you can simply comment onto the video. I will be happy to answer. And also, if you need any support on any queries on troubleshooting, you can simply reach out to me by the comments or by sending me an email, by doing WhatsApp, or by reaching out to me on LinkedIn. So all my contact details or the handles to different social sites are there in my video. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you liked it. Thank you.